Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tyler. Hello, welcome, thank you for joining me. If you are not new here, welcome back. It's good to see you. How are you? How's it been? Happy New Year. I'm recording this the day after New Year's Eve. I hope everybody's been healthy and well. There's a few things I want to get out of the way for this video. First of all, different background. I kind of took the opportunity by the balls to make this video. There might be a slight echo. You might hear a computer huffing and puffing over here because I need my notes. I do not have them in paper form like I usually do. I know sometimes you guys hear me like flipping my paper book, but we have a computer today. This is just temporary. I've really been meaning to push this video out. A lot of stuff has been going on besides the pandemic this year. For myself, change is good, but it can be scary, it can be overwhelming. Let me just put it that way. I wanted to say a big thank you to everybody who subscribed since I've been away. I know I've been away for some time. I don't mean to do that. Again, I've just had a shit ton of stuff going on, and I really appreciate your patience and your loyalty and your support. Hello there. Sorry to interrupt. It is not a Tyler video if I forgot to mention a few things while filming the original footage. I totally forgot to give you guys my usual warning in the video, so here we go. Warning, this video may include descriptions of violence, sexual abuse, harassment, molestation, blood. This one is not as gruesome as the other ones, but this one, if you are sensitive to those things, you have been warned. Please proceed with caution. We are going to talk about the story of Yaser Said and how he murdered his 17 and 18-year-old daughters, Amina Sarah and Sarah Said. There's a documentary that a channel made regarding the murders of Amina and Sarah Said. I will link it in the description box down below. I believe it does a really great explanation on the story. It not only interviews some family members that are involved, it also interviews family, friends in general, and even the mother of these daughters, who literally can go, yeah. And it's really good. It's very heartfelt. It's very touching. It's an extensive explanation. I'm going to do my best to sum up the story here. There's not much information regarding Yaser Said. I'm going to call him Yaser from now on. He was born on January 27th, 1957 in Sinai, Egypt. I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly. There's not very much information, especially regarding his future wife, Patricia Owens. Their story, apparently, as how they came to be, is that Patricia Owens, her family lived in an apartment complex beside a convenience store that Yaser and his family owned. Patricia actually dated one of Yaser's older brothers before breaking up with him and then going out with Yaser. I mean, if you have great, I guess the word would be intellect about people based on some of their decisions and their history, you can already tell by Patricia going to Yaser's older brother and then to him after they break up. You can already tell what kind of person she is. To add on top of that, Yaser was the oldest of 5 children. Patricia dated her brother, who was way older than her at the time. She was 14 years of age when she started dating him before breaking up with him and then later on dating Yaser. His name was Esuri. Am I saying that correctly? Esuri. Esuri. And then it kind of gets a little more complicated after that. So after Esuri and Patricia break up and Patricia starts dating Yaser, they were only dating for 2 weeks before Yaser was starting to propose the idea of marrying one another. And then he became very persistent about it to the point that Yaser began taxing Patricia's parents about the idea of allowing him to propose to her and allowing them to be wed. I think this was taking place in Texas. I'm not sure. I know that they resided in Texas when things start getting further into the story of this situation. But I'm not sure what state they were in, but Patricia's parents were kind of like, yeah, like, she's 14, she's young, you guys have barely been together, we don't really know you, you don't really know us. I don't think that's a good idea. But then he's so persistent, eventually they're like, you know what, this guy, he's like not giving up. So let's sign papers to give permission to the state to allow our daughter to get married to this guy. So eventually, Patricia's parents sign over the permission of allowing their, I guess eventually 15-year-old daughter to get married to this guy. Family, members would ask, like, Patricia's parents, like, why did you allow your daughter to get married at such a young age, especially given the fact that she barely knows the guy she's getting wed to. And, it seems like her family, particularly her parents, try to brush it off like, oh, they love one another, it's instant love, you know when you know. And really, it was because Yaser was over here like, oh yeah, I have like wealthy family members in Egypt that send me money, and I've got like all these wealth and riches. I mean, our family owns a convenience store. I mean, like, we have chains and stuff. Like, we're made of money. Like, I'm pretty sure Yaser bribed the parents and gave them this, fantasy of, yeah, I'm gonna take good care of your daughter. You're gonna marry into wealth and like all this stuff. And Patricia, she says, like, in an interview that particularly her experience of getting married to Yaser wasn't not only like the wealth he promised, but it was because Yaser was her way out. Patricia literally despised her parents so much that her way out of living with them and being on her own in freedom was marrying this guy who was just so attentive to pressuring her to getting married with him that she was like, yep, that's my meal ticket right there. That's my way out. She married him because, and I quote, to get out of the house because he promised everything and she was tired of being poor. And a lot of people found his promises like hard to believe, and I'm talking more like Patricia's family members, like those that were close to her, were kind of telling her like, you really sure about that? Because, like, not to be mean, but they own a convenience store and he works at a 7-Eleven and can barely help his family pay the bills, like, even though they own a store. And so a lot of people really doubted that Yaser had like, wealthy ties in Egypt because it just wasn't adding up. And I mean, it is true. If you're claiming to have like so much money, I mean, you would probably live in a really nice area, a really nice house. It would match. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this is not coming from me. This is coming from her family relatives. Like, they legit were telling Patricia, like, okay, but if he's wealthy, doesn't make sense. I feel like not Yaser, Patricia's parents were, or at least her dad, it seemed like her dad was more intertwined with Yaser's like proposal, like, hey, like, if you let your daughter marry me, if you let me marry your daughter, you're going to be married into like a wealthy family. And I feel like he was greedy. I feel like he signed his daughter over so quick because he's probably not that far from the person that Yaser is. Like, he seems like a very greedy individual who's like in it for himself. And I mean, like, because all I'm going to say is I could never, like, watch my husband sign over any of my children. You know what I mean? Like, I could never watch particularly him sign over my daughter to marry some dude she's barely known for more than 2 weeks. How do you do that? A lot of Patricia's family members believed that Yaser was being deceptive to her and Patricia's family because a lot of family members of Patricia believed that Yaser's goal was to Americanize himself. So a lot of women at the time of their marriage, their wedding ceremony, a lot of Yaser's family members and brothers were continuously going up to some of the American females on Patricia's side and asking them, like, hey, you want to marry me? Hey, you want to get, hitched sometime? I'm not even sure how that comes up in conversation. But like, and again, not my words, their words. I don't want people to think I'm discriminating. Like, that's not how I think. But like, they were saying that at the wedding, some of the cousins were reporting to like Patricia and some of her immediate family how uncomfortable they were because some of Yaser's family members, the Said family, some of those members were coming up to them and literally asking them, do you want to marry me? Like, do you want to, like, I don't know, like, again, how does that even come up in conversation? Can I put a ring on that finger? Would you like to do that sometime? Like, they were bothering them. Some of the women were kind of like excluding themselves from the wedding. They're like, I don't feel comfortable being here anymore. And they were trying not to talk to them because that was kind of like what would come up in conversation with some of the Said members. So a lot of people were speculating based off of that they were just trying to Americanize themselves and really do their absolute best to marry an American citizen in order to get their green card so they could permanently stay in the United States as a legal citizen, as that's how that works. And again, not coming from me, coming from them, that's exactly what was going on at their wedding. And that's exactly why a lot of people believed Yaser was not in it for Patricia, but for what Patricia could give him given her status in the United States. Another confirmation that kind of ties into that speculation is the fact that after Yaser and Patricia were married, like literally right after their wedding ceremony, Patricia confirms in an interview and some family members saying that they went right down to the office. I'm not sure where you would go for that. I'm sorry. But like, they went straight to get his papers processed and to get his green card as soon, like literally the day after their wedding ceremony. I mean, that's pretty much how she made it seem, is like they had just got married and he was like, all right, I'm gonna get my green card now, let's go. And just, that was like right away. So Patricia learns very quickly later on that Yaser is a very abusive partner. Not even 13 months. They weren't even married for 13 months, and Patricia was pregnant with their first child. Patricia recalls that during her pregnancy, Yaser started showing his true colors. He was abusive towards her. She recalls touching him on the neck one time, and he was so upset by her physically touching him, and it wasn't even like assaulting him. I think she was just like petting his neck or running her hand through his hair, and he grabbed her wrist and threw it off, grabbed her by the throat, and hit her. Few months later on into her first pregnancy with him, she would very quickly learn that he was not tied to any wealth in Egypt. He was not rich. He did not have like this lavish life that he promised her after they would get married. I believe they lived in a trailer park location for trailer park houses. Their situation more particularly is that they lived there, but their trailer park did not have like necessities at all. Patricia talks about how in order to shower, they would borrow a hose from one of their neighbors. They would hang it over a tree, let the water, like turn on the water, let it flow over the tree, and then shower underneath it. They had no privacy. The bathroom inside the trailer park did not work. It did not flush. The sink did not work. So they would have to use the hose to wash their hands. They would have to go far out from the trailer park location to dig a hole and literally poop and pee in it. It was like not a place that you could live, that because it didn't function, especially for a pregnant woman. Later on you're going to start hating Patricia's guts, but in the beginning I'll feel for her just a little bit. Honey had to go out in the woods in the middle of the night to poop and pee, okay? he literally did her dirty. But, I mean, also, she should have done her homework. Okay. I mean, Yaser would hit her sometimes, and he would claim that it was to teach her a lesson because her parents didn't raise her right. And he would refer to the fact that her father signed her over at the age of 15 to a man that she barely knew. He literally ridiculed her for doing that by beating her. So, Patricia, also, I don't know if I mentioned it, some people call her Triss or Trissy. We're going to call her Patricia. Might as well even call her Patty, you know, because I don't really like her. Patty Pat. She was only 16 years old when she gave birth to their first child, who was Yaser Said, on March 10th, 1988. Patricia would then again become pregnant shortly after the birth of her son Yaser Said. And further into that pregnancy, we would still learn that Yaser is abusive and, you know. So while Patricia was pregnant with their next child, their second child, Patricia would actually have to work full-time as a pregnant woman because Yaser still was not pulling his weight. They still lived in a trailer park home that had no electricity, no working bathroom, no working shower, and she did her absolute best to pay the bills and help them towards a better living. A few months later, at the age of 17, Patricia would push out their second child, Amina Said, on March 2nd, 1989 in Dallas County, Texas. So after Amina is born, that's when we have like documentation of them being in Texas. Not sure if they were anywhere previous. It's not really declared. But after giving birth to Amina Said, Patricia would then become pregnant with their third child. Like, we can gather pretty much at this point that Yaser Said has an agenda. After the birth of Amina Said, Yaser would finally get up off his lazy ass and start getting a job to earn enough income for his family in order to buy a house and put a decent roof over their house, over their head, with electricity, a working bathroom and shower, thank God. And at the age of 18, Patricia Owens pushed out their third child, Sarah Said, on March 16th, 1990 in Dallas County, Texas. At this point, we have Patricia Owens, we have Yaser Said, and we have their three children, Yaser Said, who is a boy, Amina Said, who is a girl, and Sarah Said, who is a girl. So Yaser is the oldest, Amina would be the middle, and Sarah would be the youngest child, but they're only like all a year apart. There is discussion between Yaser Said and Patricia about the religion that they want to place on their children. Yaser kind of like plays it off. He's like, oh, you know, like, I would prefer that they follow my faith and they're Muslim, but we're in America, so, you know, I want them to choose whatever they want when they grow up. It's not a big deal. And as their relationship evolves, as the children grow, we're going to tend to see a little bit more control in that area. Yaser goes from careless to a bit more demanding and wants their children to conform to certain beliefs. And, you know, I kind of saw this coming because I'm not sure if you're viewing this and you already have some knowledge on the case, or if you've heard of it, or if you've seen any pictures. Yaser kind of plays it off to Patricia, and I think he does that to not raise any, you know, suspicion from her that he may change his mind later on, like, oh, you know, like, whatever they want. But then, you know, she can kind of foretell that he's going to be a little bit more strict about them being Muslim and their beliefs within that regard. But, like, you know, and he kind of leads her astray. But if you pay attention to some of the disturbing photos that Yaser would take with his kids at such a young age, and even with Patricia, it's kind of like, hon, you must have known, like, he would be really strict about the religion and later on want them to conform to a specific kind of belief and religion later on. I'll share the videos on screen, but basically he would take the kids when they were super young, or I think some of them when they were a little bit older, He would dress them up in, like, you know, some fabric. Forgive me, I don't know if it's a specific kind or the name of it, but he would kind of drape it over their head, and then he would give them a weapon. And most likely it was a gun, a big fucking gun, and he'd put it in their lap and have them pose with it. You know, so I was kind of watching some videos and doing some research, and a lot of Muslim people, like, do not want anything to do with that type of shit. They think that it's nothing really to do with the beliefs or the religion. It's more of the fact that this guy is just a straight up fucking psychopath, and he thought that was like, he was doing that for shits and gigs. Like, oh, look at my something month old kid just holding a fucking gun. Isn't that cute? Cute, right? Who in the fuck does that, dude? In the year 1998, about 8 years later, after Sarah was born, so she's like 8 years old, and Amina's 9 years old, is the first form of documentation regarding Yaser sexually molesting both Sarah and Amina. So what happened was, when the girls were with their grandmother on Patricia's side of the family, the girls had opened up to their grandmother about how, like, Yaser would touch them in inappropriate places against their will, and, you know, they're super uncomfortable and didn't really know who to tell. Their grandmother had, like, in a panic, called their aunt Connie, I think it's Connie Maggio, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, who had taken both Sarah and Amina to a hospital to have them physically examined by a doctor, because she wasn't sure what to do. And honestly, I mean, I think that's the right call. The best thing to do is really just take it to the authorities that can really help, like, address the situation as best as possible. The doctor hadn't found, well, actually, I can't say that. It's not really clear if the doctor did or did not find any physical evidence of any sexual molestation or abuse. However, when they called Child Protective Services of Dallas, they had an agent come down and interview Amina and Sarah regarding, you know, their claims that Yaser is touching them inappropriately. After conducting an interview with each, you know, Amina and Sarah individually, it came to the conclusion that both of the girls were telling the truth, and they had the same exact story, you know, not exactly, but their own separate experiences in regards to Yaser touching them inappropriately against their will. Let me see. I think they specifically said that, you know, he would touch their breasts, fondle their private parts, and would physically hurt them if they resisted against him. So they made a report, they brought it to the police, and it was actually enough evidence to get Yaser detained and arrested with these charges. Like, he was actually going to go to jail. But this is where we start hating Patricia. I'm sorry. I try not to push my opinions on you guys when you're watching these videos. I really want you to hear the story and take it as your own. But honestly, it pisses me the fuck off. Okay, so what ends up happening is Yaser is in custody. And I don't like to say this word. Okay, I don't like to say this word. But when it comes to your kids, they come first. And Patricia is so brainwashed by Yaser that when she finds this out, she literally tells the girls, when somebody asks you about what dad did to you, what Yaser did to you, you tell them that you are mad at your father and you made it all up to get back at him. You tell people that what you're saying is not true, it's a lie, and you made it all up. Just to save Yaser's ass from going to jail. And you know what? It worked. It worked. So the girls end up telling anybody and everybody who asks them regarding the sexual molestation claims that they made, not only to their grandmother, their aunt, the doctor, and the CPS agent that came to interview them, that they were lying. She tells them that you know, you're lying. Tell people that you're lying. They end up doing it because they're young kids at this point. You know, mom reigns over everybody at that point in life, and I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure Patricia might have, I don't know, I want to draw my own conclusions, but I'm pretty sure she might have threatened them too. Like, if you don't do this, you know, he'll keep doing it. Maybe, God forbid. But, you know, they felt compelled enough to do as their mother said. So people started backing off. The charges were dropped against him. He wasn't going to go to jail. That documentation still exists, but it is no longer in use against him. This guy walked free. He walked free. He was not charged shit. Honestly, I have huge respect for the Owens family because even though Patricia did this, they still were against it. They were not for it. It actually caused a lot of issues between Patricia and her own family. Her grandmother, her sister, I mean, a lot of people were not with what she was doing. The kids were so adamant about Yaser abusing them, and then as soon as she talked to them and told them to lie and not ever say that again, or say that they were lying about Yaser touching them, I mean, people were like, you guys are all sorts of fucked up. Like, those are your kids. They need help. Yaser needs to go to jail and be held accountable. You know, it caused a lot of issues between Patricia and her family, which I was like, respect. Hold people accountable for their shit. Hold people accountable for their shit. And all she did was just like, you know, oh, nothing happened. And she just went on with her life, basically. Before the charges had been dropped against Yaser and he was still in jail, Amina, who was like a 9-year-old girl at the time, wrote a letter to her aunt Connie, who had the same woman that had taken them to the hospital to be physically evaluated, had written a letter to Connie saying, you know, it's true that Yaser sexually molested us. We were assaulted by him, but our mom told us not to say anything anymore, and that the previous accusations, we needed to say they were a lie and that we were lying about them. So Amina gave Connie a handwritten letter stating this. And I guess at the time, Patricia, the girls, had lived with Connie at the time. I'm not sure why, but Connie had felt the need to hide this letter since Patricia was in the same household as her, because she genuinely felt that her sister, if she found the letter, would destroy it as evidence that Amina actually was being told to, that she was actually being silenced by her own mother, Patricia. So Connie's like, I have to hide this letter. If she finds this letter, that's the only evidence I have for these girls. And I mean, Patricia was trying to shut them up. So Connie was smart. She knew that if Patricia found this letter, she would continue to help Yaser by destroying the letter. And unfortunately, I guess Patricia, I'm not sure if Amina, like, accidentally, unintentionally gave it away that she wrote a letter to Connie. I'm not sure if, but most likely Patricia might have grilled her own daughter and maybe felt that she did something, gave Connie something, but lo and behold, Connie hides the letter in her bedroom only to find that Patricia rummaged through her bedroom later on, stole the letter, and never saw it again. Patricia might as well have destroyed it. Like, it was gone. And she did that to protect Yaser instead of her own children. Sometime after that, Yaser was released from jail, from custody, and after everything that had happened, Patricia stealing the letter from Connie, her family, you know, being against Patricia's decision to defend Yaser instead of her children, she was in a bad place with her family. At this point, Yaser's out. He comes to Patricia and he's like, yo, I'm not guilty at all, but let's fled the country for a couple of months. Literally. These two people took their children to, let me get the names. So Patricia and Yaser chose to take their children to Maryland for 3 to 4 months before traveling to Egypt. So not coming back to Texas, not coming home. They left for 3 to 4 months to Maryland, and then they went to Egypt. They stayed in Egypt for a few months before returning home to Dallas, Texas. It's not determined how much time they spent in total outside of the States, away from the family, the community that pretty much like knew all their dirty laundry. They decided to take the kids and stay away. deliberately to escape the heat from Patricia's family, the police, the community, those that were involved. Like, they deliberately left. And it's like, if you really didn't do it, let's say your kids, I mean, I don't, it's unlikely, it's super rare, but not impossible. Like, let's say your kids really did hate you, and they're like, oh yeah, he touched me, like, just to purposely get you in trouble. If you didn't do anything wrong, what is the point of fleeing? Like, oh yeah, you didn't do anything wrong, but like, let's go to Maryland and then Egypt, where we have, ties to people who do illegal shit out there. Like, that makes total sense. Like, yeah, nothing to hide. Just going to Egypt just in case the authorities are out for me again. I could be out here. Okay. However, after Patricia and Yaser returned to Texas, I think the Owens and Patricia, like, her family were trying to, like, give each other an olive branch and, like, mend the distance that was created because of Yaser and him molesting Amina and Sarah. So one of Patricia's youngest sisters in the family, who is unknown, kind of just staying anonymous, which I don't blame her. Like, I'm not trying to seek people's names out. If they're there, they're there. If they don't want to be mentioned or seen or involved in the situation, I totally respect that. But she would begin babysitting the children and, like, helping Patricia out while Yaser was, like, doing his job. He was, actually, I'm sorry if I didn't mention this, he became a taxi cab driver. So he'd be out kind of like at odd hours and stuff, and Patricia would need help with the girls and Islam, and her youngest sister would become basically like a nanny. Like, she would come over on certain times, like on the dot, and she would stay for a good amount of time and help out. After a while, though, Patricia's sister would tell the Owen family about how she would witness abuse from Yaser, whether it be verbally or physically, and it wasn't necessarily done unto her. At least that was the impression I got. It was more like she would be helping with the kids and just kind of, like, see really odd, stuff going on behavior-wise. She would see some form of harassment here and there, and she would tell, like, the Owen family, like Patricia's relatives, like, when she would go back home at the end of the day, she would say, like, please don't make me go back there. I don't want to go back there. I don't want to be in that house. And honestly, her family at first, like Patricia's family, the Owen family, at first was like, oh, don't be a baby. You're so lazy. Your sister needs help. Go help her. And she was, like, adamant about it. She was like, no, you guys don't understand. Yaser's an awful person. They're not good to the kids there. I don't want to witness that anymore. I don't want to be in the middle of that. I'm done. And so she stopped going over there. But of course, like, Patricia's family was kind of like, what is going on that just made, like, your own sister freak out and not want to be anywhere near you or your family? But of course, like, seeing how easy it was for Yaser to be, like, rid of his accusations of the molestation, all the family could really do is just, have kind of like an intervention with Patricia and tell her, dude, Yaser's not good for you or the kids. If what your sister is telling us is true, Patricia, you need to get out of the house. You need to leave this guy. You need to do better. And I'm sure more than once they've offered her help. But all Patricia did was ignore them. She didn't give, Jesus Christ, sorry. She did not give a shit about their advice and their help and their support. Like, she ignored them. And she did not acknowledge them at all, And because of this, like, her family took the molestation accusations against Yaser more seriously, because they're like, well, if what the youngest sister in the family is saying is true, then it's like, why, we don't have, like, any reason not to believe that he would have also sexually molested the Amina and Sarah. So when Amina and Sarah were teenagers, they started taking up Taekwondo in a nearby studio close to where they lived. Sarah wasn't really, like, that into Taekwondo, but according to their instructor, Amina would be more invested in Taekwondo. And it was not only because of, the activity itself, but this studio is the location where Amina would meet the love of her life. Amina met Joseph Moreno at the Taekwondo studio, who she would very quickly form a friendship with and later on a relationship with as boyfriend and girlfriend. A lot of people summed up their relationship as your typical high school sweethearts, but given everything that Amina and Joseph would go through together because of Amina's father, Yaser, it's safe to say that these two had a really once-in-a-lifetime kind of love, and it just makes it even more heartbreaking, to be quite honest, about Amina's passing. But Joseph does play a very big role, a partial role in this story. As Amina and Sarah evolved into preteens and teenagers, full-blown teenagers, they were reported by friends and family as fun, loving, intelligent, caring girls who were just the brightest light in your presence. It was said that Sarah had a boyfriend around the same time that Amina and Joseph had formed a relationship, although there's not very much information regarding him, so I assume perhaps he was in and out of Sarah's life very shortly. Sarah and Amina had their lives mapped out beyond high school. They talk about going to college, a 4-year college, graduating, and gaining a career and an occupation that would be very stable and get them on their feet. Sarah was 17 years old when she was dating her boyfriend, and Amina was 18 years old when she started dating Joseph. Both girls were very secretive of their relationships with their boyfriends, to their mom, to Islam, and to their father Yaser, because of how strict he was in regards of keeping the girls, close to their religion and not being so westernized or American, as Yaser would put it. If you remember earlier when I mentioned that Yaser was kind of careless about their religion, but it was he did that intentionally to not alarm Patricia in, making it obvious that he wanted to have control over the children and what they believe. Well, Yaser really, his initial plan all this time was actually to have the kids, Islam, Amina, and Sarah, follow a very strict Muslim religion. I'm not even sure if it's Muslim belief or if it's really just him at this point, but he didn't want the girls, most definitely in either case, he did not want the girls dating any American boys, westernizing themselves, and being too attached to, American beliefs, and investing themselves in the culture here, I guess. Around the same time that the girls had boyfriends and they'd become teenagers, Yaser had simultaneously, while they were dating their own boyfriends, had started mention of, the girls marrying worthy suitors out in Egypt, suitors that Yaser had picked out himself and arranged. It wasn't really determined when the girls would be marrying these suitors, but he had begun prepping them verbally and mentally, I'm going to marry you off soon, and you will not be here in America very long because I have a husband waiting for you in Egypt. Now, I think Yaser is kind of prominent for, if this guy is prominent for anything, it's really the creepy home videos that this guy takes of his own children. And it's funny because it's not even Islam, Amina, and Sarah. It's mostly videos and footage recording Amina and Sarah. And the most disturbing part about these videos and why they're so prominent regarding this murder case is the fact that when he is recording Amina and Sarah, majority of the time, Amina and Sarah are not aware that he is recording them. So Yaser would actually go out of his way to stalk his own daughters when they were at school or when they were at work, or even at home, or the Taekwondo studio. He would record them across the way in a parking lot, stalk them from the curb. He would record them And sometimes, and they wouldn't even know about it. And sometimes when he was, spying on Amina or Sarah, Islam would be in the video, like heard in the background. He'd be with them, or sometimes, like, for instance, I think there's one footage. If I can share it, I will. If not, I'll link it. There's a home video of this camera that Yaser has of him stalking, I believe, Amina at work, checking customers out in a checkout stand at a register. And he's recording her in the parking lot across the way. And I believe Sarah and Islam are with him in the car. And he makes a comment about how she's smiling too much at a customer. And you can hear Sarah in the background saying, Bapa, she has to do that. It's a part of her job. And he says, following after that, oh, she's in trouble. Something of that remark. Like, you could tell from the footage, you can tell from his mannerisms, he's super controlling. We have a very old-fashioned abuser here who is very intent on controlling every single aspect of his environment and the people within that environment. So, I mean, there's just the creepiest footage possible, and it kind of helped documents a bit of his abuse as well towards the girls. So there's also another footage that, like, I can't really get out of my head after seeing it, but I think, like, Islam and Yaser are kind of teasing the girls. They're in the girls' bedroom, and I believe Amina is laying on her bed hiding from the camera under a blanket, and she's wearing pants and a t-shirt. And he kind of, like, pulls the blanket off of her, and he says, Amina wears pants when she sleeps, or something like that. But the words, the phrase, she wears pants when she sleeps, is mentioned. And you're kind of thinking, like, first of all, it's creepy. Second of all, he focuses on the fact that his daughter is fully dressed when she goes to bed. And honestly, I hate to say it, but it kind of stuck out to me, because if they are used to him sexually assaulting them or molesting them at a young age, and that if that's followed them into, as they grow up, I feel like that comment was just so haunting to me, because I feel like, why would that fucking matter? Why would your daughter's dressing in full clothing be like a detail that you feel attached to? Unless, I don't know, you're sneaking in their bedroom and doing things, It's like, why would it matter what they sleep in? And I feel like the girls maybe sleep in their clothes because they're trying to make it a little difficult for someone to touch them in the middle of the night. So it's just so haunting. It's like, it's not even funny. It's just, it echoes in my head. Like, some of the things he says in this video are just like, and knowing what's going on at the same time while you hear what he says in some of these video clips is just like, it gives you chills, makes me want to throw up just thinking about it. But if I can find those clips, you'll either be seeing them on the screen, you already saw them on the screen, or I will put a link in the description box down below if you are curious to see some of the home footage he has taken with his own camera of the girls, and some of the things he says that are just completely just disgusting. So I will make sure to provide that for you. As we can gather, the older that the girls get, the more abusive Yaser becomes, because his main goal now is to control his daughters, who just want a normal life. They don't want anything to do with their father's beliefs, being married off to suitors in Egypt of his choice at such a young age. They want nothing to do with that. And so as they get older, he can kind of sense and understand that they're pulling from him and what he wants to do in regards to them being married and their future. And so he starts tightening his grip on them as far as control. And it gets to the point where on more than one occasion, Yaser has threatened Amina and Sarah and told them, if I find out you're dating American boys, I'm going to hurt them and their family. I'm going to hurt you. Or he's like, I'm going to kill them and I'm going to punish you. And it's reported that Sarah had even told a friend that Yaser threatened to put a bullet through Amina's head for having a boyfriend when he had kind of confirmed his suspicions of her dating someone. And I mean, these girls went through hoops, okay? They went through hoops and freaking, you know, courses of, you know, trying to protect the people that they were dating. They knew that if they engaged in a relationship, they needed to keep the boyfriend's identity protected because they genuinely knew and felt and had been told by their own dad that he was going to murder these boys if he found out that they were dating American boys. So Amina and Joseph, I don't have very much information on the both of them, but it has been mentioned that they would text and then they would have like a code number. So like, for example, if Yaser confiscated Amina's phone and tried to call whoever she was texting or text them back to confirm if they were a boy or not, Amina would quickly text Joseph, I think it's the number 7. And that was code for, you know, my dad has my phone, or, you know, he's on to us. Like, don't text me back until I text you to let you know it's okay. And she would text him back with another code, that word or number that meant it's me and it's not my dad trying to trick you into confirming your identity. And, you know, it got to the point where she couldn't even text him anymore. Yaser was so controlling. So she had to stop texting him, and she got a notebook that Joseph and Amina would, you know, I guess they would exchange at school, at high school. Both went to Louisville High School in Texas, and they would exchange a notebook designated for their conversation. So she'd write something, you know, give it to him at school the next day, and then he'd respond, give it to her before she left, and then, you know, or they would go back and forth throughout the day, and they would just change it, you know, they would just hand it off here and there. And that was their way of communication, because he got strict and more strict as things went on. And then eventually, and we'll learn later on, eventually Yaser would find the notebook, and he'd understand it was between her and a boyfriend, somebody that she loved and was seeing. And then soon enough, that had become an issue too, because her form of communication was compromised. Sometimes the girls would come to school and friends would confirm that they would come to school with, I think they said, visible indications of abuse on their bodies. They would have abrasions amongst the skin, including severe bruising on the face, neck, and arms. Amina had come to school one time with welts and claimed that her father had kicked her in the face when discovering notes written between Amina and her boyfriend Joseph. And the reason this was a big deal is because at one point, first of all, getting kicked in the face is a big deal, but it caused her more pain because Amina had braces. And so when he would smack her or kick her in the face, her braces would catch the inner skin of her lip and it would tear skin whenever she tried to remove it. So, I mean, she was bleeding from the mouth quite a lot. This all kind of ties in because eventually after Yaser discovers the notes between Amina and Joseph, he discovers the notebook. Patricia, while this is all going on, is obviously just standing by and watching Yaser hurt their daughters, and, you know, not Islam, because we'll learn later on that Islam at this point is forming into Yaser's right-hand man. I mean, he adopts, like, I don't even want to say he forms the same opinions and mindset. He really just has been put in a position where he adopts Yaser's behavior, his mindset, his beliefs. So anything that Yaser at this point is doing on to anybody in the house, Islam is basically right there, like, rooting for it. He's just there with Yaser, basically doing the same thing. And Patricia, I don't know if you guys saw my last video, but here's to another. Like, I did a video on Ashley Martinson and her mother, how she stood by and basically watched her daughter get sexually assaulted by the men that she brought into the house. And here, Patricia Owens goes into the the women who shouldn't be mothers club, basically. You know, like, Patricia Owens just, at this point, is like letting Yaser do whatever he wants. I want to say that it's safe to say that she's pretty much brainwashed. She doesn't go against Yaser. She doesn't question him. She lets him do what he wants. He is abusive towards her, but I feel like once the girls kind of evolved into teenagers and they basically almost, young adults, I feel like Yaser's abuse and all his anger and energy within that just kind of went towards the girls, and Patricia's over here just about as equal as Islam. Like, I don't feel like he was abusive towards her after the girls became like a target for him. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. Like, I don't think she's threatened anymore at this point. I don't think she's in danger anymore. I feel like, and I'll explain why later on, but she, at this point, is kind of just watching the girls, like, get, demeaned, degraded, mistreated, abused, sexually, physically, mentally, emotionally, and she's kind of just like, because meanwhile this is going on, her family is kind of like, dude, maybe you should get away from Yaser. Like, they're kind of like talking to her again and going down that whole ass conversation again, like, you should move out, like, we're here to help you and support you, like, if you need it, like, fucking do it already. It's so aggravating to think about this. It's so aggravating to think about these. I'm going to try to save it for the end. I really am going to try to save it for the end. And, according to Connie, like, Patricia has tried to leave the house, but Yaser has physically, like, shot out the tires in her car once to make sure she doesn't physically leave. And, I just find it a little hard to believe, just a little bit, because when you live with an abusive individual and you live with them and you have to observe their behavior, what sets them off, you understand them inside and out. I mean, you've been married to the guy for how long? You've had kids with him. You start to develop your own observations and details of, like, how they act in response to certain things. Like, I am pretty sure she would know how to outsmart him and get out of there, because then she eventually does it, honestly. But she doesn't do it until she understands that Yaser is going to, like, hurt the girls now that he's, like, she doesn't move the girls out until she knows that for sure, now that Yaser has discovered Amina has a boyfriend, that he's going to hurt her. So she finally decides, and it's estimated on Christmas Day, or, around Christmas Day, like, week, the week of Christmas, like, a week before the murder for sure, Patricia takes the girls out of state in order to evade Yaser, because she's, like, genuinely worried that they're gonna hurt her, he's gonna hurt them, the girls and herself. On December 27th, 2007, Sarah, Amina, and Patricia stay in a hotel in Tulsa, Texas, while they search for a house to rent and permanently stay in. So Patricia at this point had given, like, friends and family the impression that she was leaving Yaser for good, and, like, this is it, like, we're leaving the abuser and we're starting over. She literally went as far as to, like, when she went in and got a hotel with the girls, she gave them a fake name so Yaser couldn't trace it back, couldn't find them. And when they found a house to sign the lease in, or like I think it was an apartment. However, in any case, when she signed papers of any sort that she needed to put a name down for, she put a fake name. She put, like, it under a different name so Yaser could not find them. She was, like, very dedicated with every intent of staying away from him and made it seem like that. And, things were going well for one fucking day. Like, Islam was blowing up their phone and sending emails to Amina, and Yaser was doing the same thing. He was even, like, harassing Connie and the Owens family, like, trying to get a hold of them in order to get a hold of Patricia and the girls, and all he wanted Islam and Yaser just wanted them to know, like, please come back home, like, we miss you, we just want you home, and we want you to be safe, and all this bullshit. And then, literally the next day, December 28th, 2007, they get the lease for an apartment. They sign it. They move in right away. And, you know, both Yaser and Islam are like still harassing him, still sending him emails, still calling him, still leaving voicemails, still harassing the Owens family, trying to get a hold of Patricia and all this stuff. And, you know, at the same time, Amina is kind of texting Joseph like, I have a really bad feeling that my mom is going to take us back. You know, she seems to be showing a bit of weakness and like, you know, edging towards going back to my father. And Amina has said more than once to Joseph and family members that I would rather die than go back to him. Literally that same day or around the December 29th or the 30th, within that time frame, that amount of days, Patricia caves and she takes Sarah and herself back to Yaser and Islam back in Dallas, Texas, where they live. Amina did not join them, and here's the funny point. Here's the funny part. I'm going to link the documentary I first mentioned early on in the description box. I recommend you take a look at it. If you would like to see how fake Patricia Owens is, it is so apparent. Amina, so in the interview, she kind of makes it seem like she was cool with Amina. Everything's good. Everything went smoothly. It's like she didn't purposely bring her kids back knowing that her husband was probably going to do something absolutely awful, if not continue to physically abuse them. And she makes it seem like, Amina went to go stay with her friend Rosemary, who was like in the area because she didn't want to come back with us. And I gave her permission to go hang out with her friend. Like, she acts like it was like a normal thing. Like, oh, you want to go hang with your friend Rosemary while I'm trying to drag you back to your abusive father? Fuck yeah, go hang out. Tell her to say hello. Like, no, Amina did not want to go back. Someone, I believe a friend, I'm not sure if I'm getting the name wrong, but a friend, Rosemary, offered to take her in, you know, and Amina went because Amina was dead serious. She's like, I'm not going back there, I'd rather die. And in the interview, Patricia makes it seem like she went to go pick up Amina because Amina wanted to come back home. And Amina asked Patricia to come pick her up. That is not the case at all, okay? I get the feeling that Patricia went back there, dragged her ass out, took her back home when she didn't want to go back to Yaser, and forced her to go. Like, that is the energy I'm getting, you know, especially because when you watch Patricia in the interviews within this documentary, this chick cannot get her shit straight. And you know what? Everybody but her in this documentary is showing so much emotion and pain and sorrow for the loss of Amina and Sarah. Meanwhile, this chick is like, she kind of seems like it's a burden. It's an inconvenience to sit in front of a camera and revisit everything that's happened. This lady has literally moved on with her life. She dragged her daughters back to Yaser. And on January 1st, 2008, Yaser claims that he wanted to take both Amina and Sarah out to eat for dinner. He escorts the girls in his taxi cab, and he eventually reaches Irving, Texas, where he parks in front of a hotel. I believe it's called the Mandalay Bay, which it doesn't matter. Because the fact is, he parks, or while he's driving, he decides to pull out a handgun and shoot Amina and Sarah. The reason I got turned on to this murder case is because I was watching a video that was about a compilation of very disturbing 911 calls where people were experiencing near-death situations, or they were experiencing death situations, like they were dying. And I don't want you guys to think I'm into like morbid shit like that, but it really clicks things into perspective for you when you realize you can go from just chilling in your home watching a YouTube video to having to dial 911 because God forbid something fucking awful is happening. And I'm going to see if I can get, well, I will, because Sarah's last final moments was being shot by her father in the back of his taxi cab while her sister was already dead. And the 911 call is the most disturbing thing you will ever hear. Hopefully you don't have to hear anything disturbing beyond that, because this is pretty haunting as it is. But I'm going to go ahead and play it for you. And please, when you're listening to it, I know it might be a lot to take in at once. Listen to what Sarah's saying, and please listen to the dispatcher's approach, because that is also something I would like to discuss with you.
911, what is your emergency? What's going on, ma'am?
I'm dying, that's what's up. Oh my God.
I just have you here in the corner of my room. First off, I just wanted to show you I can slay makeup. I just was not like feeling it in this video. I literally had no makeup on me where I was filming. But as you can see, bitch, I know exactly what I'm fucking doing. Okay, just wanted to make that clear. First of all. Second of all, so the original audio of the 911 call that Sarah made to the Irving Police Department, I could not find for the life of me. I remember when I first started researching this case, like almost a couple of months ago, maybe half a year ago, it was available on YouTube, but now it's not. It had subtitles and everything, and I can't find it. The original version, I just wanted to point out to you, is a little bit longer. So first of all, Sarah ends up calling the police. Somebody picks up. The dispatcher does not ask her questions. Instead, he seems, as you'll see me rant about, he is confused as what's going on, and he transfers her to the Irving, Texas Police Department, where a representative of the Irving, Texas fire department picks up. And at first he's like, Irving, Texas Fire Department, and then he asks again, and he's like really rude about it, and then he doesn't hear anything. So the dispatcher from the 911 is like, ma'am, are you still there? And it ends up being an open line, meaning that Sarah is not responsive. The dispatcher and the representative of the fire department just end up not asking her any more questions or responding to her. And then that's when they try to pinpoint her location by using the open line. So that was the original clip of the footage, which I cannot find. What I'm showing you is just a snippet of it, because I don't want you guys to see my rant and think, okay, but I don't understand. What is she ranting about? Because this, the guy clearly tried to help her. No. The guy and the person from the fire department were super annoyed, and just they heard her on the phone in agony, and nobody was giving a shit, pretty much. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there and explain that a little bit more. As you can see, it's not only very disturbing, but it's also very upsetting, because the dispatcher, I mean, honestly, dude, I'm not even a 911 dispatcher, and when somebody calls, the first thing you're supposed to do is, what happened? When did this happen? Your address, your location. Please describe it to me. The guy puts her on hold. He says, hold on, man, I'm sorry. And then he gets the fire department on the line. And then she's still screaming in agony and is possibly bleeding out at that point, and has been shot several times. She says, I'm dying, and he, why does your mind go to, hold on, let me get the fire department? And, the Irving Police Department was actually ridiculed for this, because in the dispatcher guideline, the questions to ask are not at all what this guy did. He didn't even ask any questions. He didn't try to get to the bottom of what was going on. He puts her on hold, and then he hands it off to the fire department while in the call with her, and they're both hearing her scream in agony, and then she dies, right? So it's an open line. And then they struggle trying to pinpoint her location, because the 911 dispatcher didn't do his job right. And like, I get these are stressful situations and such, but I'm not going to give this guy slack because they go through extensive training before they are put in their position, before they start answering calls that are directed towards 911. And this guy, I mean, I don't want to be negative here. Obviously, I don't think they could have done much because, you know, they were shot several times each in very fatal, you know, locations on their body. But at the same time, they could have been on Yaser's ass a lot quicker if somebody would have done their fucking job right. And it's just, it's aggravating. It's, you know, he doesn't even ask her, what happened? Please describe your location to me. You know, because she already, if he was paying attention, which is a part of his job, he would have understood within the first few seconds of that, you know, 30-second phone call that she said, my dad shot me. So her dad shot her. She's been shot. She says, I'm dying. We can assume she's injured. The next few questions would have been, do you know your location? What is your location? If not, please describe your surroundings to me. Where are you? You know, it's like, you gotta do a better job than, hold on, ma'am. And then, you know, Irving Fire Police, you know, or Fire Department, how can I help you? And then the guy in the fire department gets all fucking, like, annoyed that nobody responds right away. Irving Fire Department, like, he sounds all pissed on his second take. And it's like, listen, I know you guys have to deal with assholes and probably, like, the shittiest, like, uncivil people sometimes. At the same time, like, I'm sorry, your job is to save lives. Like, maybe put that at the front of your mind when you're answering a fucking phone call. Like, we're not calling the bank. We're not calling customer service. Oh, hold on. Let me transfer you to the other department because I can't fucking do my job. Like, no. And so, you know, and they talk about this in the documentary, and I will give that to the family, and I will give that to people who are mourning Amina and Sarah, that they could have done an absolute better job than that shit. That is so annoying, it's not even funny. Like, if he was paying attention, he would have already checked off a few things he needed to understand in order to do his job. And the next set of questions should have been determining where the girls were. And I think to top off what makes me angry about that altogether is the fact that I think it's an hour later. So, and forgive me. So this happened on New Year's Day, okay? Yaser parked in front of the Omni Mandalay Hotel, and I think it was a hotel representative, a worker, or a pedestrian was walking by the taxi cab and realized there's two people slumped in the taxi cab. One in the front seat, one in the back seat. He can't tell if they're conscious. He can't tell if they're just sleeping. He doesn't know what's going on. But an hour later at 8:30 p.m., there's a second call to 911 of the Irving Police Department. And this man reports that there's two people in the taxi cab. They don't look like they're breathing. He tells them the location of the taxi cab, and finally somebody gets out there. Mind you, they tried to pinpoint where Sarah's call came from, but because the guy didn't do his job right, they had to send somebody out there on an estimated ping of where it was coming from, and it was nowhere near them. And it took someone said, I'm not exactly sure how accurate this, it took a cop an hour to get out to the Mandalay hotel to check out the cab. And it took a cop quite some time to get out and check the estimated ping of the phone call. So, I don't know if we're just a shitty ass department or if we need better people on the job, but it took like a good wholesome fucking couple of hours after the initial murder for shit to get going. And I mean, I don't know exactly. Again, I'm going to say I'm not, because I don't want to be held accountable for false information. So I'm just going to say I'm not sure how accurate this is either. But when they found the bodies of Amina and Sarah Said, who passed away on New Year's Day from Yaser Said shooting them, I think they search the taxi cab. They figure out who it belongs to. It belongs to Yaser. They end up, so again, at this part, I'm not sure if it's accurate or not, but I read that they tear gassed his house to see if anybody was there, found it was empty. Patricia wasn't even home. She was somewhere else, and coincidentally. And I'm just kind of like, why in the fuck would you tear gas his house? Like, if he really did shoot the girls and go back to his house, why would you tear gas it? I'm sorry, that's just a little extra. I understand sending a SWAT team in and shit, but like, that just seemed a little bizarre for me. He was a one-man team who shot his daughters with a handgun. And not to be a dick, but like, wouldn't you tear gas somebody that's like a little more threatening than that? You know, like maybe tear gas somebody that just killed like, I don't know, 5 people in a single hour or so. And again, that might sound stupid, but it just kind of was like, usually you just see like cops invade the house, you know, make sure the guy's unarmed, handcuff him, bring him out. And it's just kind of like, I don't know how accurate that is again, but like tear gassing the house, like, well, you know what, actually, I wish Patricia was in the house when they did that. That would have been justified. That would have been nice to see. But yeah, while the person who called the cops at 8:30 are on the line, they have an open line of Sarah because, you know, since she passed, the phone was kept on, and they're trying to figure out who it is. It literally took like 3.5 minutes or like 4 minutes, under 5 minutes for that guy to call and for the cops to like, you know, start taking care of it. Even though it took someone a while to get out there, they responded more professionally to that person's phone call after finding the bodies. I really recommend watching the documentary. In the interview, when they're going over this portion of everything with Patricia, she is just fake as fuck, dude. I cannot even can't even put it into words. You just watch her mannerisms, the way she handles the questions, how coolly she just sits there and calmly she just explains it and deflects her responsibility of putting the girls back in that monster's hands. It's just ridiculous. I'm looking it up right now just to make sure like I have my information correct and just taking a double take, but I'm not sure what qualifies someone to be put on the FBI's most wanted list, but Yaser Said actually made it onto the FBI's most wanted fugitive list, and I'm looking at it right now, and I was just wondering, I think it's top 10. I think they rank it out of 10. If I'm correct, he was pretty much up there. And the good news about this, and I wish I jumped on it sooner, but he actually was finally captured, I believe after 12 years. He was finally captured on August 26, 2020. And, you know, it's really hard because, yeah, 10, there we go. So Yaser Said was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted in 2014 in connection with the 2008 murder of his 2 teenage daughters, and he was arrested in Texas on August 26, 2020, along with his accomplices, which was his brother and Islam Said himself, his own son. So I still have a bit more to go over, but I just wanted to add this in now. This guy was on the run for like 12 years. A lot of people thought he had fled to Egypt, but a lot of people believed he actually still resided in Texas. And I try not to bash the police because I know a lot of them actually do their absolute best to make sure people like him go to jail for the crimes that they've committed and they do not rest. However, the Irving, Texas Police Department, I think they took it seriously after the fact that Amina and Sarah were murdered, because a lot of people had quite a fucking uproar about the fact that this guy had been on the run for so effing long. A lot of people believed he was in Texas, and they tried to tip the Irving Police Department about his whereabouts, but nobody took it seriously enough. Or if they did, Yaser Said and his family, the Saids, are very closely tied to a lot of people who do criminal activity, and they themselves have a lot of unjustly criminal ties. So, you know, they have a lot of moles, they have a lot of loopholes. I mean, they have their own, like, insiders who I'm pretty sure pulled strings to make sure that this guy was protected for a very long time, and I truly believe that. His family is very sketchy, and none of them have like a stable or truthful living. It's all based off of criminal activity. Before the girls passed, there was, and I haven't really mentioned this because I'm not exactly sure how true it is. I haven't been able to find any proof myself. When you watch the documentary, there's mention of Yaser actually taking like Sarah and Amina to Egypt to potentially marry them off to these suitors that he found. I'm not sure if it didn't work out or what happened, but when Amina was out there, she was physically abused. Her uncles were with her, and they would harass her. They would demean her. They would tell her that she needs to behave, and, you know, she needs to do as she's told, and all sorts of stuff. Leading up to her death, like a couple of months before she passed, Amina would stop talking to Joseph more and more, or not stop talking to him, but she would kind of make it like erase the trail of him ever being in her life in order to protect him and his identity from her father. Because even though, like, if she was married off or she stopped seeing Joseph, Yaser was so controlling and psychotic that he still wanted to go after Amina and Sarah's boyfriends and murder them. So Amina did like her absolute best to protect Joseph by doing whatever she could to confuse Yaser and make sure that he would never be led back to Joseph. And it's so heartbreaking because that's why I really believe that these two were genuinely in love, and it wasn't just like a phase like some people think. Like, she actually went out of her way and sacrificed herself and her happiness that Joseph brought into her world to protect him, you know. And I'm watching like snippets of the documentary as I kind of record this, and at one point they asked Patricia Owens, like, why would you ever take a polygraph test? And she literally says, I would never take a polygraph test because it's a waste of my time. If your children were murdered and you loved them unconditionally, and you genuinely didn't have any involvement in their murder, and you genuinely did not know of the circumstances that they would be put in or therefore killed, a polygraph test would not scare you, hun. And you would take it. You're a piece of shit. Get the fuck out of my face. Oh my god. As I am recording this is the anniversary of Amina and Sarah Said's death, and oh my god, dude, it sucks. It sucks so bad. I think the worst part of it is that, you know, you just can really tell, like, Patricia does not give a fuck about Amina and Sarah Said. It's so obvious in her interviews. It's obvious in her statements. When he was captured, she was like, oh my god, me and my family have been like suffering for 12 years. I'm like, shut the fuck up. No, you have not. You have not given a shit about those girls. You know, she is such a front. It's not even funny. It's such a front. I mean, you guys should see where they buried Amina and Sarah Said. I mean, I have to look it up, but I think it's literally a cemetery for Muslim individuals who are just like really not cared about. And it is a very, in no disrespect to the people that are buried there, but the people who chose to bury their loved ones in this place did not give a fuck about them. It is a disgusting cemetery. It is unkept. It has fucking weeds growing all over the place. You can barely tell where the tombstones are anymore. And Amina and Sarah Said have these beautiful tombstones established on this property, and they're laying there in the midst of this disgusting place. If you really loved your kids, you would give them a beautiful burial. You would give them a beautiful ceremony, not just some pretty tombstones and then that's it, and then just dump them somewhere. And I remember thinking this because I believe the burial ground is genuinely a place for like people that were not very like liked in their lifetime. Like, hold on, I'm gonna look it up. Okay, I actually looked up the website for the cemetery, and legitimately it talks about not having enough funding for monthly maintenance. So in the documentary, it's, again, in no disrespect to the people that are buried there, but it's trash. The people who bury those that are there come to the website or talk to the people who own the cemetery, and they must come to understand, especially visually seeing how the cemetery is kept, that it is not like, it's not a peaceful or beautiful resting place. I mean, literally whoever wrote this on their website, and I'll link it down below if you're curious or you want to read it yourself as well. It says, however, courtesy of a few Allah-fearing folks who took the lead, jumped and rescued me. Hope you do understand that I am the only stable and risk-free 401k investment option you have without fearing any economic downturns. Regardless of where you live in Metropolis, I am your final home. You think it's time to invest in me where Allah is promising unlimited matching? Honestly, whoever wrote this is creeping me out. But they're begging for donations. They're basically saying I can take anybody that doesn't have a health plan or insurance. Just to give you guys like an insight of basically, this reflects basically the cemetery. I was looking at it now, and it looks like whoever helped this person out has made the cemetery to look a lot better, but I still feel so heartbroken that these girls were put to rest there. It's honestly a shitty ass fucking cemetery. They deserve better. They've deserved better from the start, and the fact that Patricia Owens put them there, it's just heartbreaking. It really is. I mean, put it this way, I'm sure when you bury someone, you have to understand the state of the cemetery, because I'm sure that would be a concern, would it not? When you go to bury somebody, they'd have to tell you, like, look, our position here is a little shaky, and we don't get enough donations or make enough money to where we can sustain the people that are staying here. I mean, this guy whoever this person is talking in their description about how they're might be shut down. It literally said that the community is kind of neglecting them and that they might be shut down, and little donations help here and there. So it's like, you would have to say that, wouldn't you? You'd have to say, yeah, we can bury your loved ones here, but I'm just letting you know we might be evicted, and if that happens, your loved one's body is still here. Wouldn't you think maybe you would find a different cemetery? Like, maybe I should find a place that's a little bit more stable. Like, no offense to the Muslim cemetery, which is literally what it's called in Denton, Texas. No offense to them, but like, wouldn't you think maybe I should find a more stable cemetery that won't shut down, so I don't have to worry about transferring my loved one's body? Because at that point, what happens? Do they stay in that ground forever and get neglected? If somebody ends up buying that property, are you even still allowed to visit your loved one? You know what I mean? Like, these are things you would believe would be a concern. But instead, Patricia Owens is still kind of like, no, that's good, just bury them here. Because she clearly doesn't give a fuck about them. Like, you're going to literally bury your daughters there? If you really cared about them, wouldn't that be a concern? Like, I'm genuinely just fucking curious. But you know what? She'd probably say, oh, you know what? I would, but I don't have time. I think that'd just be a waste of my time. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today and for putting up with my ranting. This story really has me heated. They all do, but like, if you're not heated after reading this shit, then, I don't know what to tell you. What happened to these girls is super unfortunate. It's it's beyond frustrating, and I really am glad that you guys were able to sit down with me today and join me and hear this story. I covered everything I can think of. If there's anything new, I'm gonna provide it in the description box down below. I'm gonna have my links down there, including my socials, the sources where I get my information, everything. So if you're interested in anything, curious, if you have questions, you can find everything down there in the description box. If you want to share anything with me, please comment. I love seeing your guys' comments. Thank you so much for commenting. I mean, I really look forward to them. And I love interacting with you guys in the comment section down below. And tell me what you guys think. Tell me what you guys think. This was a really hard one. I mean, when you watch the documentary, every single person is fighting back tears and is so emotional, except for Patricia Owens. And the Said family, they didn't allow interviews. They didn't want any comment on it. They don't want to talk about it. Probably because they're guilty of something. And I mean, it's pretty obvious at that point. There's a difference between just wanting your space and time from the press or media because you're trying to process things, but like at the same time, they just totally ghosted it altogether. Like they really want nothing to do with it because they have shit to hide. So if I go missing, by the way, after this video, it's probably them. It's probably them. They're probably hella pissed for me ranting and cussing about majority of the stupidity on their side. And probably super pissed that their brother was finally caught. So, love, peace, chicken grease if you don't see me next time. Also, it's 2021. We got a pandemic. Honestly, at this point, I would not be surprised if I got fucking kidnapped or killed because of some shit I was spewing on this video, but anything's possible at this point. Again, thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. Please stay safe. Please make good choices. And if you see something, if you hear something, report it. Investigate it, but don't get in trouble. Don't do anything illegal and be safe. But just, people are in need of help sometimes and we just ignore it or pretend we didn't see anything. Do the right thing. Say something. Seriously. Like, I feel like if people, teachers, instructors, mentors, what have you, these girls that they are around, if they just said something, if they reported something, if their friend said something, even themselves or to their parents, and their parents said something, if somebody said something, there would be so much documentation against Yaser, and these girls could have been helped early on. And I do believe that. I really do. In some cases, I really do. So I ask you that you guys do what you can when you're presented with something like that. And be fearless. Be fearless. And again, stay safe and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.